Proverbs 25:28. In ancient times, city walls weren't optional. Okay? In ancient times, city walls, they weren't optional. You had to have them for survival. It was imperative that you had wall. No walls equals no safety. So if you didn't have a wall, you didn't have safety. No self-control, kind of the same thing, right? You're left vulnerable, reacting to everything around you, maybe letting your emotions invade what God's trying to build in you. And so Proverbs 25:28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. A man without self-control, with no boundaries, is like a city that's been broken into and left without walls. Impulse tears down what influence is trying to build. Impulse or influence is what we're talking about today. And impulse tears down what influence is trying to build. That reaction, that it leaves you exposed. Impulse leaves you exposed to what was once protecting you. And a city whose walls are broken through is like a person who lacks self-control. So I want to walk through this story. Can we walk through this together? In Mark chapter 5 is where it starts. And this is a man that's encountering Jesus. Mark 5 and verse 1 says, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of Gerasenes. Gerasenes, however you would like to pronounce that. And verse 2 says, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. So immediately he came out of the tomb when Jesus steps out of the boat. Verse 3, he lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him any more, not even with a chain. Oh, likely they had tried to restrain him from being who he was because he was perhaps acting outlandishly. And so they tried to bind him up, and they tried to restrain him so that he wouldn't go crazy. But they couldn't do it anymore. They didn't have that. Verse 4, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart. He broke the shackles in pieces. No one had strength to subdue him. Like a Samson moment almost, where Samson in the Old Testament, he's the strongest man in history, and Samson, it's like I see a Samson moment here where this man, like, he could not be tamed. He could not be stopped. He Verse 5, night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. Always. This man wasn't just hurting. He was controlled. Chaotic. Woo. Talk about craving chaos. Imagine if we were in this story and maybe we were in the city living with him, or maybe we were walking with Jesus, following Jesus. And we see this start to transpire. And this man, and I'm not so sure in my studies about the spirit world, I'm not so sure this man was evil. But I wonder how empty he was. And then the emptiness allows something to fill it. You're looking for something to fill that emptiness and that void. In this, I can see this man being led by impulse. Always crying out, cutting himself with stones. Was he a bad person? I wouldn't imagine he was a bad person. He was just filled with something that he was discontented with, dissatisfied with, and it's almost as if he was living as though he was dead, living among the tombs, in the mountains, couldn't be restrained, no purpose, no vision, no. And as I'm reading this, I'm looking at this man and I'm thinking to myself, they called him Legion. And the man didn't have a name in this story, only what controlled him. He's referenced to as Legion. And it reminds me of the woman with the issue of blood, labeled by what she had, and then Jesus calls daughter. And the enemy always tries to name you in your worst moment. One mistake, and that isn't that the reality? That the minute you make a mistake, whoever, however, whenever, always tries to rename you. But Jesus came to reclaim your name, not remind you of your shame. It's what he does for this man. Jesus gets out of the boat. Here's this man. It's chaotic, living confused and chaotic. And Jesus comes to reclaim his name. He doesn't come to remind him of his shame. Verse 6. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. And this is interesting to me because this man, no one could constrain this man. And when he saw Jesus, it doesn't say, let's hit verse. For he was saying to him, come out. Verse 6, there we go. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. He didn't even need Jesus to come close. He didn't even need Jesus to come close to him, to run and fall down before him. What manner of man is this? In verse 7, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, what have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me. Verse 8, for he was saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. So interesting, the obedience here. Verse 9, and Jesus asked him, what is your name? And he replied, here it is. My name is Legion, for we are many. Verse 10, and he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Don't send me out. 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 Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't send me out of the country. The demons beg not to be sent away. But watch this. Jesus gives them permission. Hit that next verse. Now, a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. And the next verse. And they begged him, saying, send us to the pigs. Let us enter them. Send us to the pigs. Let us enter them. And I'm reminded that the way that a spirit gets into the earth is through a body. A spirit needs a body for expression. That's the way a spirit expresses itself, is through a body. And that's why I think here, Legion is empty. Where does the spirit go? And so they ask him here, send us to the pigs. And so he gave them permission. Okay, that's where you want to go. And the unclean spirits came out and entered in to the pigs and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. I thought to myself, well, did the spirit drown? Did the spirits drown? Why would, what's the, and I'm trying to figure out, this is my finite mind I'm trying to understand, why would a spirit, so that the spirit goes out of a man, into the pigs, and then into the sea? Well, why wouldn't Jesus just throw him into the sea? Why wouldn't, what? And then the more I got thinking about it, the more I wonder if this is a display of deliverance. Letting people know, you might have seen him like this, but understand it wasn't really him that you were seeing. Remember, Jesus is on the cross and he says, he's on the cross, he's hanging on the cross, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. What do you mean they don't know what they're doing? They know exactly what they're doing. No. They didn't know what they were doing because they didn't realize this is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and we're nailing him to the cross as though he's a criminal. They really didn't know what they were doing. And I wonder here if Jesus is putting this on display. The deliverance of this man, I want to show you how crazy the pigs act. So he gives them permission to leave. They leave and take this herd of 2,000 pigs. Whoa. And they rush into the water and drown. That's what this man has been carrying. That's what this man. And I take a step back and I say, well, no wonder he was having a hard time. No wonder he was chaotic. No wonder he was struggling a little bit. No wonder what a situation. And what an opportunity for Jesus to show up and show out. Show himself strong. What a powerful moment where Jesus steps in. Noted here, he didn't have theology and he didn't have it together, but he had enough to cry to say, Jesus, help me. What if we didn't need a formula? What if it was that easy just to cry out and say, Jesus, help me? It seems so simple and it almost seems elementary, like There's got to be more. But in reality, this is what Legion does. He just cries out. He says, Jesus, help me. So Jesus lets the demons go to the pigs. They immediately jump off the cliff. And here's the proof that the man's not crazy. Spirits could have gone anywhere, Jesus said. But it's almost like Jesus wanted them to see, right? What if what's been driving you wasn't you? And I want you to know when Jesus steps in, what's been driving you drowns in its own chaos. This is a moment where Jesus steps in and it drowns in its own chaos. So, I also noted here, it's interesting, even pigs would rather die than live possessed. And man, why do we try to manage sometimes what we could be surrendering? Verse 14, the herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country. The people came to see what it was that had happened. In verse 15, they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man. And here it is, they call him a demon-possessed man. The one who had the legion sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Oh, here we go with labels, right? God delivers them. God just does a miracle, and it's back to normal. It's back to normal for the people that are onlooking, but for this man called Legion, he's clothed and in his right mind, and they're afraid of him still, not knowing, not realizing he's transformed. He's met Jesus. And this is kind of how it is, isn't it? It's a sudden shift from a breakdown to a breakthrough, and sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it's in an instant. Sometimes what we go through takes a moment to work through it, and then other times it happens in an instant. Sometimes we have to cry out to Jesus over and over and over again, it feels like, and other times it's one time and boom, everything in our lives shift. Man. But Jesus didn't give this man a program. He didn't say, this event is what's going to heal you. He didn't say, and it wasn't a, we love the youth nights and we love the young adult movements, but he didn't say the program is what will deliver you. Even a Sunday morning experience he didn't say that that's what was going to deliver you. Jesus didn't give him a program. He just gave him peace. There's no conditions on it. And what's crazy is the town still fears his freedom more than his dysfunction, because it proved that they chose to give up on him. And Jesus restored him. And some people, it seems like that in our lives, some people are more comfortable with us living chaotic than they are with Jesus making us whole. Not sure why that is. But then I wonder, does our healing expose their unsettledness? It seems like every time someone heals, things start to change in their life. Not because the healing changes everything necessarily, and it can, but it's almost as if what healing does is healing makes you realize, this should be different in my life. And it's like healing is that journey, that process, and it's Jesus walking with us in it. Let's keep going here. In verse 16? Verse 16. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs. And so those who had seen it, they're going around telling people, hey, this is what, you ought to check this out. And I would have been there too. I would have been like, hey, you got to check this out, man. This guy. And verse 17 says, and they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. Well, hold up. They began to beg Jesus to depart from, I'm sorry, what? They began to beg Jesus. Who? Why? What? Verse 18. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. He begs him that he wants to be with him. I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. Or can I go with you? In verse 19, and he did not permit him, but he said to him, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Because when God does something for you, he's really doing something through you. Verse 20. And he went away and began to proclaim to the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone marveled. And so he went away, Legion went away and went to Decapolis and proclaimed how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. Everyone was amazed. Whoa, this guy. Jesus didn't let him go, but he let him go. He didn't just save him, he sent him. And he went from someone that everyone was giving bad news about to someone proclaiming the good news of the gospel. I keep going back to this as a man that had whatever he had. It went into 2,000 pigs and they ran away and drowned in the sea. This is what he's carrying. And now, he's carrying good news. I want to encourage you, if you've ever felt too far from God, Jesus built a movement using the most messed up man, at least in this chapter, to me. Jesus built a movement. This is before Peter. This is before Paul. This is before they take the gospel into the world. Here goes the Legion. Jesus is building a movement using the most messed up man. And he became the first missionary to the Decapolis. They say 10 cities before any revival. A restored outcast with a restored story. Genesis 5, verse 22, but the fruit of the Spirit, check this out, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. I want to just stop right here just for a second and say, when someone is carrying the Spirit, when someone is being carried by influence and not impulse, how will we know this is fruit? The fruit of the Spirit is, and so we see love, joy, peace radiate. Not all the time. We're humans and we have those moments, but this is the fruit of carrying the Spirit, being influenced by the Spirit. Verse 23, gentleness and self-control. Against such, there is no law. You can't put a rule against these. Verse 24. And those who belong to Christ Jesus, have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Self-control isn't manufactured. Self-control is produced by the Spirit being alive in us. We can't manufacture self-control. We can try our hardest to discipline ourselves, and we can try our hardest but how much more easier is it to call on Jesus, and He gives us the strength to have that self-control. Is a life without restraint really living? Really? That's what I see in this man, Legion. Self-control isn't a personality trait. It's a fruit. It's produced. It doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from staying connected to the life source. So fruit comes from. And fruit doesn't grow because it's striving. It grows because it's abiding. It's connected to what? To Jesus. 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 24, Paul says, do you know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you might obtain it. Verse 25 says, every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, trophy, whatever. But we, an imperishable. It's something that lasts forever, for eternity. And verse 26, so I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as only beating the air. There's a purpose. There's a cause. There's verse 27, but I discipline my body and keep it, what's this? Under control. Lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. And I really like that latter part of the scripture where Paul says, if I'm not exercising this, as Paul writes, if I'm not exercising this, I can't necessarily expect everybody else to exercise this. This isn't something that comes from humanity. This is something that comes from something greater. Tomorrow's version is going to thank you for that. Tomorrow's version of you is going to celebrate this. you leaned into God and he gave you the ability to triumph over that, just like he had, where he leaned into the Spirit and he was able to triumph over death itself. Having discipline means you believe there's something worth showing up for. It's not a training. You think about an athlete who's training alone at the gym every night. No one sees it. It's behind closed doors. It's at night or it's early in the morning. The really successful ones will get up really early in the morning. You know, the ones that like their muscles are way out here. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you know, they're 5 a.m. gymmers. You know, and we don't see them when we go at 9 a.m. They're already done. They've already. But there's something that's worth showing up for, right? What if your breakthrough started with one boundary? It's God teaching us to. Can you hang those? Actually, just stand up here. Look nice for a minute. I'm gonna take one of these. You got that one. You want this? You too? Okay. I'll give them to you. Here's the thing, though. Shake that up real good. This is what life is like. You got Legion, who's got all kinds of stuff going on inside. And sometimes, can we be honest? Sometimes we're there too. We got all kind of stuff going on inside. And yeah, go ahead. Just keep going. Just keep going. And here's the thing is it's you reach a point where it's like there's so much pressure and there's so much buildup and there's so much going on that something's gotta give. Because when I open up to someone else, when I open up to what's going to happen when I open up? And that's right there is exactly what we do, isn't it? When I open this up, I'm going to make sure it goes on someone else. It's that projection. You know what I'm talking about? You maybe you've been there, or maybe you've been on the receiving side, maybe you've been on the giving side. Either way, I think we've all experienced this, and the pressure is just, and then we realize like we do have a choice. You know what chills this out? Yeah, ice will chill it for sure. I appreciate that. Ice will chill it. What'll chill this out? Let it chill. Don't open it. Don't let that explode. Now, who would want this now? Who would want this? You want this now? Huh? He was. Can this guy have this? Can he have this? Okay, you can take it too. I appreciate it. But in reality, we don't want this to. We don't want it implode. We don't want it. And sometimes this is how we walk around. We walk in life. We're shaken up by life. We're shaken up by relationships. We're shaken up by regret. We're shaken up by shame. We're shaken up by every little thing that wants to make us explode. But self-control isn't about keeping the lid on. It isn't about not opening it up. Self-control is about letting God settle what's been stirred. This is what Jesus does. This is what he does for the legion. He comes to him and he lets it settle. I'm going to settle this. They're going to go into the pigs. Go. But it's already been stirred up. Are we following feelings or the one who made our feelings? What's the impulse that we've obeyed recently that's left us feeling empty? And what would it look like to wait for the whisper instead of chasing the noise? And I wonder this week if I could encourage you to do an impulse audit. Every time maybe you reach for the phone or open the fridge or start the scroll. An impulse audit. What's on repeat? What's that soundtrack? What's on repeat? Is it impulse or influence? Impulse